So here are 3 things that we put on social media today that could actually solve the debt crisis right now. Reverse the Trump tax cuts, which Biden did say he would do.
Hasn't.
Will not ever do it.
Hasn't.
Pass Medicare for all, which would eliminate the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors, effectively nullifying the private insurance and big pharma mega industries, which get the biggest corporate subsidies out of anybody because they are not necessary, and people can't afford to live. So that would be saving, at a minimum, about $500 billion a year.
Is the name of the bill Medicare for All, literally?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is
because I was going to say, normally, like when I'm talking to people, I don't use that. It almost seems like a trademark. I always say either single payer or universal.
Well, that's what it is supposed to be. But ostensibly,
I'm
that's
just
what
okay. But that literally is what it is.
I say Medicare for all because that's what became popular.
No,
we need a single payer universal health care system.
I know it's sort of like, but it's okay. Never mind. It's a trademark name.
And finally, we need to end again when we talk about the military spending in this country. What we're really talking about is endless war spending. And yes, the war in Ukraine is part of it. Hundreds of billions and what will be trillions of dollars on things that you will never see, you will never touch, and never, ever understand.
And it will never help the people of Ukraine.
Ever.
Well, so it's basically all of that money goes to investors and oligarchs of the military-industrial complex, and they just they siphon the money. There's no accountability for their budget whatsoever. They have no accounting. They lost how many $1 trillion that they can't account for, and it's just all of this free money to all of these contractors. And the people in Ukraine they're not benefiting in any way.
And of course,
this isn't helping them.
And of course, most importantly of all, ending corporate welfare, which is again, the military welfare, the welfare across the board, where mega corporations are able to get away with what they get away with. And Double K is correct. The federal debt is really a private sector surplus. The problem is that the ones who are seeing the benefits of it are very, very few, and the very, very many are getting screwed left and right. And as is often the case, the middle and working class are always the ones who have to foot the bill. The rich always figure out a way to run the system into the ground, and they never get punished for it.
See, this is how I see it. Let's just say hypothetically that I thought that our military budget was like a legitimate thing and we actually had this need for this giant war complex, which I don't. But let's just say that I did think that. Like, there would still need to be an accounting, and there would still need to be some sort of results. There would need to be some sort of results, but there aren't. And so what is actually happening is nothing. And they're skimming all the money, and it's just going into private sector corporate greed. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's not going into anything. It's certainly not helping our service people. It sure as hell doesn't help our veterans. The people in Ukraine are not going to see shit. So all you're doing is financing the corporate military industrial complex. That's what we're doing. And the percentage, like if we were to say what we needed functionally to actually exist, it's probably like a smidgen compared to the percentage that goes to greed versus what's actually needed to produce what we would need to produce if I even did think we needed to have a war complex.
And of course, which I don't. And the old stupid argument, which always comes to pass, which is the Republicans want to cut spending, the Democrats consider it extreme, and the president is pushing for new taxes that Republicans have rejected, and the same thing will always repeat itself.
Over and over.
Because it's kabuki theater. There's always...
It's world wrestling.
When they always assume that it's like, if we just got enough Democrats in there, there will always be a Kirsten Sinema or a Joe Manchin to screw things up.
Or a parliamentarian.
Whoever. You really think that if you got enough Democrats in there that are bought by corporate special interests that you're ever going to get any real benefit? You couldn't even pass Build Back Better. And I don't care what it would have taken to convince Sinema or Manchin to get on board. There's not enough bribery in the private sector for them to have been given what they wanted through whatever the president would have been able to give them, whether to their state or to their own personal benefit in the long run. Is it pay to play? Sure. You know what? If it's pay to play to help the working class of this country, there are some things you just have to accept.
See, with that, I would much more prefer like an LBJ approach to dealing with certain things. And it's like, that is not the people's like Like when you're talking about the power of the president, you want somebody who is an executive person that makes those sorts of decisions. And yes, it should be somebody that is not going to be bullied by one lone senator and the parliamentarian. That's
100%.
crazy. And why we sit here and worry so much about who's president, if that is so powerful, if we're so worried about who the president is because it's so powerful, but yet the parliamentarian is what held them up. See, it's this complete contradiction. Either they are so powerful as a president, or they really can't get anything done.
The argument
what is it?
Well, here's the thing that people don't really seem to understand. It's like the argument is always that the Republicans are the ones who refuse to raise taxes on the rich. But what it really means is that the rich will not accept taxes being raised on them. So what they basically do is they use a negotiating tactic saying, we'll just put Republicans in power and make sure that our taxes aren't raised. And we will use that as a threat against Democrats to kick them out of office, because in the end, the rich always win, no matter who's in power.
It doesn't matter.
And there is this idea that somehow we'll just get the Democrats in there and that's going to solve the problem. It isn't going to solve anything.
We've had 3 administrations with supermajorities and they didn't codify Roe versus
The
Wade.
one thing that Biden said he would do, that they've all
Absolutely
agreed
double K,
would actually make a difference, is reversing Trump's tax cuts. That's $2 trillion in revenue, of which almost 85% of it went to the top 1%. And when I hear anything from anybody about how, oh, you want to take away my tax cut, what, your $1,000 tax cut? Yeah, it matters. But you know what? That's a tax cut that you should have and the rich shouldn't have. That's the disconnect. It's like, well, Trump did this for me. Yeah, and it's great that he did that for you. But how is it that you can't do 1 + 1 = 2? Or 1 or 2 - 1 = 1? It's simple math. The rich don't need anything.
No. Yeah.
And they always manage to get everything.
But it's amazing how it's just, once you see the man behind the curtain, like when I watch them in Congress, like I don't know how anybody takes this seriously. It's every bit as performative as like the monarchy in the UK. It's really very performative. Everything in Congress is just so, it's not even, I honestly think that they discuss it ahead of time. I'm telling you, I remember meeting Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan because it was when they were enemies, quote unquote, but they weren't. And that was the thing. And when I met them, they were hanging out backstage, but it's like, that's what this is to me. And by the way, Andre the Giant was kind of cool.
Democrats and Republicans have until June 1st to increase the government's self-borrowing limit or trigger an unprecedented debt default that economists warn could bring on a recession. Not could, it will. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Monday offered a sobering reminder of how little time is left. But again, that's not really the issue here. Any deal to raise the limit must pass both chambers of Congress and therefore hinges on bipartisan support. McCarthy's Republicans control the House 222 to 213, while Biden's Democrats hold the Senate 51-49. We all know that doesn't mean anything. A failure to lift the debt ceiling would trigger a default that would shake financial markets and drive interest rates higher on everything from car payments to credit cards. You
want to know what would be interesting? If we would be able to just take all the private sector out of the equation for a second, let's assume that that no decision that these people made would in any way financially benefit them or anyone else. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. Can you imagine? What would they do? What would be the thing to do because they can never justify any of these actions that are very anti what the majority of people want. And yet they skirt around it. But the reality is, if there wasn't profit being made, then they wouldn't be doing any of these things.
Republicans want discretionary spending cuts, new work requirements for some programs for low-income Americans, and a clawback of COVID-19 aid approved by Congress, but not yet spent in exchange for a debt ceiling increase, which is needed to cover the costs of lawmakers' previously approved spending and tax cuts. Democrats want to hold spending steady at this year's levels in 2024, while Republicans want to return to 2022 levels next year and cap spending growth in the years ahead.
Why don't they do this with the military budget?
You're asking for too much, Jen.
Because I would honestly, this is not an unreasonable situation, but it's just interesting how it's like they pick and choose which funds this works for. So this works for things that help us domestically, but this has zero effect whatsoever on us being able to bomb poor people somewhere else. Gotcha.
So a plan passed by the House last month would cut a wide swath of government spending by 8% next year. So here's what's being offered, and here's where the costs come in. For revenues, interest, increase Medicare tax, increase taxes on high income earners, increase corporate income tax rate to 28%. You know, the idea, here's the thing. The corporate tax rate
silly.
under Trump went from, I think, was it 30%, 35%? It was something in that range.
It was in the 30s.
And he dropped it down to like 21% or something.
And so now Biden gets to look good?
So now let's bump it up a little bit, make it look like we're really doing something here.
Oh my God.
This is what they're fighting over?
Like literally what they do is they take everything away from you so that every little crumb is just such an exciting thing.
So the savings would be $3 trillion. The spending or the we need new health spending. We need to make sure that the corporate subsidies still go to private insurance and big pharma. But here's the new health spending. Tax breaks.
Oh, I like it.
And child care subsidies. You mean to tell me, like when you were trying to pass the Build Back Better, which would have provided universal child care, but just couldn't get it through.
So close. Even though it was tied to the infrastructure bill and everybody jumped on that.
Even though you were supposed to pass Build Back Better first and then the infrastructure bill.
And everybody just allowed that to happen.
Like if you're at the point now where you've been following politics at any length of time and you don't know the difference between these two things, I can't talk to you because you are literally blue-pilled. You're blue-pilled.
But those are generally not the people watching us, though, I don't think.
So here's what the Republicans are proposing.
Okay, so this is their
Limit, Save, and Grow Act. Let's speak of it. Rescind unused COVID relief funds. Okay. End student debt cancellation.
How much? There was this much?
This is what you give a shit about?
That's where they're going to get their money. That's what they're going after.
Here's an idea. If you're on the GOP side and you're sick of this shit, why are you not saying, okay, we're not going to cancel student debt, but why are we not making at least trade schools tuition free? Why are we not encouraging that?
Because we want our people to be stupid and dependent on menial labor jobs.
This is what Mike Rowe has been advocating for, and he's on Fox News and Fox Business all the time. Learn a freaking trade. Well, why don't we make it easy for people to learn trades so they don't have to depend on the government to survive?
Get him on the show.
I've been trying to get his attention.
I like him so much.
Repeal energy tax
credits. That is a
credits.
very, very sexy man. He really is. He's like the guy who gets shit done, man.
Yeah, he does.
I appreciate that. He's extremely properly masculine.
And the interesting thing about interest, ladies and gentlemen, what you have to remember is that we are a debt-ridden country. We like to put everything on the credit card. And there's a reason why
at the macro and micro level.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's just our trend.
You cannot afford to pay. And they say that there's like a psychological effect between spending cash versus using a card.
It is, for sure. For sure.
And there's a reason why there's...
But again, I don't really understand this in connection to MMT. That's what I don't understand. I don't understand this. Like, I wish we should be doing this with Steve.
This is why Steve needs to make an exception and come on the show.
Yeah, seriously, Steve, really? Really?
Think about what time you would be agreeable to on next Monday, because next Monday is Memorial Day. Okay. So that is a holiday, and you don't have to worry about Graham. We might have, we'll see. I think, and Craig Shapiro really wants to come on when Steve is on to give his supposed rebuttal, because we have a friend who was just on the podcast, but he really is into this stuff. He's been a Wall Street broker for a long time, and he really understands this money stuff. But of course, he happens to be somebody, not a surprise, who is not in favor of modern monetary theory. So be it. Return discretionary spending to 2022 levels and grow 1% annually.
See, I don't understand that. That's like saying I'm not supportive of the earth being round. It's not, modern monetary theory is not what we're proposing. It's what is. Like, you can't not be a supporter of it because it just is. That's like saying I'm not a supporter of science. Repeal
IRS enforcement funding. I am not, if there is one thing I will say.
Oh, I don't mind that.
That I actually do agree with the GOP on, is this hiring of 80,000 IRS agents.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
That is, well,
yeah, I agree with that.
Let's be honest. We all know that the IRS doesn't go after the rich and powerful. The only time that the rich and powerful ever get tagged by the IRS is if they get, like you say, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Well, when you become too much of a liability, George Santos, then you get taken out.
Here's my thought on him, okay? I swear to you, I think it's Andy Kaufman.
Andy never died.
Let me tell you something, because there's no way that that's a serious person. I refuse to take him seriously. And when I see him, I really do. I think it's something like that. And obviously I don't think it's actually Andy Kaufman, but it's someone a la in that vein. It's not real. It has to be a spoof. And then he's going to end up like writing this book about, I don't know, because it's crazy to me that he's gotten to where he is and is just so, and he looks like a skit. He literally looks like he should be on like, a comedy show.
See, now here is where the story comes full circle. And we got a message from Matthew who effed up.
Because he thought we were on his time zone?
No. Just personal matter, and he completely forgot about us. So.
Well, you know what? And I have that coming. That's my karma, because I totally blew off my dermatology appointment today, and I am so sorry. That is so unprofessional.
The president tweeted that of course, let's be very clear here. The president doesn't tweet. The president's staffer tweeted that he would not back big oil subsidies and wealthy tax cheats while putting healthcare and food assistance at risk for millions of Americans. Yes, you do. You do it all the time. You've done it many times. So stop acting. Again, this is the posturing, if you will, that they like to do.
This is not somebody that we can take remotely seriously when it comes to the environment.
Or when it comes to healthcare, saying, if you bring Medicare to off my desk, I will veto it and set it. I will veto it.
Good.
So on the other hand,
I veto you, Joe.
McCarthy, who made extensive concessions to right-wing hardliners to secure his speaker spot, may risk being removed by members of his own party if they do not like the deal he cuts.
Yeah, that's true.
As far as I'm concerned,
Republicans handle business in-house.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, kick them both out.
Yeah. Well, and I wish, that is one thing that they do better as well, is they take out their own trash when they need to. I feel like Democrats do not do that. Democrats hang on for dear life to everybody.
Former President Donald Trump, a Republican who is seeking another term after losing to Biden in 2020, it totally was rigged, has urged Republicans to force a default if they do not achieve all their goals, downplaying any economic consequences, of which there will be plenty.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.